Blah. Somebody scream. Did somebody scream? Hey everybody, sorry I've been away for a little bit, couple weeks. I had back surgery, there it is, but I'm recovering and I'm doing well, a little bit sore. You also might notice some changes to the channel. The Motley Stew had become kind of burdensome in the idea that it was holding so many different facets of things that I'm interested in, and my idea was that it was starting to mix the audience. So I decided to split those things out into 3 different channels. So now you have Disorderly Political, which is here, or the way I came up with that idea was, the disorder is the fact that I like to follow politics, the fact that I actually like to follow these things and read all about it and watch all about it, and then maybe I can pass some of that info on to you. Then there's LX3, which is going to be the family vlogging channel for me and my 2 sons, Liam and Logan, which is where the 3 L's come from. My wife, Michelle, is here. She hasn't gone anywhere. She's just not fond of being on camera, so she might pop in here and there, but she's not a main focus of it, and she's fine with that. And then there's Stu's Reviews, which you've already seen a few of those down on this channel. Just gonna move those few videos over there and start doing review videos on that channel, because I've got the website that's where I do those things, and that's gonna keep going, so why not do some videos about it too? So now, enough of the upkeep, let's get on with this week's story. So like I said before in one of the previous videos when this was still the Motley Stew channel, I was going to start mentioning different stories during each week's video because there was so much going on. But this week, kind of going to go back to basically one story, or at least one theme, and the theme is gun violence. The biggest story going on is the shooting in Orlando, which is being talked about as the biggest mass shooting by a single shooter in US history. 49 people dead, 50 plus injured, and reports are still coming out about the shooter and his wife and his motivations. And I will say that right from the beginning, this didn't feel like a terrorism act in the current definition of that word, meaning a religious terrorist. ISIS has actually claimed responsibility for this, or they're taking credit posthumously, and that the shooter had actually called 911 and said that he was a fan of the Tsarnaev brothers, the people who did the Boston bombing, and he was pledging himself to ISIS and all this other stuff. But from the beginning, something seemed odd to me about that. And what it was this guy's kind of immediate bragging about being a part of these terrorist organizations, because he also claimed to be a fan of Hezbollah and Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And the thing is those groups don't actually like each other. 2 of those groups are actually actively fighting each other. So I think he was using the mask of terrorism and the kind of overarching fear of ISIS as a cover to basically go do what he wanted to do, which was kill and injure a whole lot of people. Now, what made him do that? Obviously, one thing is he was unstable. Nobody who's in their right mind goes and does this. But what was he dealing with? Beyond being unstable, were there things going on in his head that he couldn't rectify? Who's to say? Some evidence is coming out saying that he was possibly gay himself, and that he was so closeted or so self-hating because of that he took it out on people who were basically celebrating that very same thing that he hated. Is that going to come out to be the truth? Who knows? We'll let the FBI and all the people who are investigating this dig deeper into his past and see if they can put together a comprehensive story. But until that comes out, I'm still gonna sit back on the idea that this was a real lone wolf ISIS terrorist, because I just don't feel that. So after the massacre, of course, what happens in our political climate is everybody starts to argue about why it happened and who's to blame, and what could we have done to stop it. Now, I am for gun control laws, I am for sensible gun control laws, and there are some common sense steps that most of the people who are polled, including NRA members, actually agree with. Now, there was a study that said 90% of NRA members are for expanded background checks, but there's also been some attacks on that exact study, so maybe it wasn't 90%, but there's definitely a majority. And just the other night, that's exactly what the Democrats won, after a 15-hour filibuster led by Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. He got on the floor with a bunch of other Democrats and they just held the floor. And he wouldn't give up until he got concessions from the Republican majority that they would at least hold a vote. He wasn't even telling them that they had to agree to pass these amendments that he wanted. All he was saying was they deserved a vote. He wanted to get it on the floor. And the 2 things that he was looking for was expanded background checks and to block people who are on the terrorist watch list from getting guns. Now, they both seem pretty common sense. If you have to do background checks inside of a store, you shouldn't not have to do those background checks in other sales. There shouldn't be sales of guns that don't require background checks. That's kind of common sense. And then the idea of the terrorist watch list, that's also a no-brainer. If you've got somebody who you suspect is a terrorist, or for whatever reason you've put them on the no-fly list, yeah, they shouldn't be able to buy guns or explosives or weapons because you kind of already have an idea of what they're going to do with them. Now, some people are criticizing the idea of using the terrorist watch list because there are people on that and the no-fly list that are wrong, that the list itself is horribly inaccurate. And while that probably is true that there's people who shouldn't be there, there should be a process to get yourself off that list once you are kind of alerted to the fact that you're on it. But that process should be hard. It shouldn't just be something where someone can call up and say, you know what, I'm not that person, and take me off that list. There should be a process where the mistaken person has to prove why they shouldn't be on the list. And that very well might be troublesome and burdensome, but it should be. There's a reason why we have that list. It's for dangerous people, and those dangerous people shouldn't be allowed to just get off the list easily. So back to Chris Murphy, he won the concession after 15 hours. Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, said he would allow those two bills to go to the floor for a vote. Now, this is a big win for the Democrats for two reasons. One, they might actually get these things passed, and it could show that the Senate as a whole, and especially the Democratic Party, can actually get something done in the wake of these horrible tragedies. You look back to Sandy Hook and all those children who were killed, nothing happened. There were a few state bills that were pushed, but there was nothing federally that actually happened after that. The second way the Democrats win is actually who votes no. If Republicans go on record voting no against these common sense amendments, they're going to get hammered with them throughout the rest of the election cycle. And there are a lot of Republicans, especially in the Senate, who are up for re-election, and they're going to be hard-fought seats, even if they're in solidly red states. Reason being, Democratic voters tend to come out more heavily in presidential election years, and you can bet that they're going to come out heavy this year. With Donald Trump being the presumptive nominee on the GOP side, there are going to be many people who come out to stop him. And once they get to the voting booth, a lot of voters on both sides of the aisle pick the presidential candidate that they want and then just party line all the way down. And if that happens, Democrats are going to take some seats, and they might take enough to take the Senate back. Now, according to some polling that I'm seeing and from people that I trust, they're showing that Clinton has a national lead of about 10 points. And usually at this point in the game, if you're below just even a few points, you're not going to win. So Trump himself seems to be really in a deep hole nationally. And the Senate is hanging in the balance. There are so many races that are so close to call that it could go either way. Now, after the filibuster was over and the Democrats had actually won what they wanted, what was hilarious was to watch the Republican response. You had Senator Mitch McConnell going in front of a press conference and saying that it was more important that they go to a meeting with FBI Director James Comey to get updates about the Orlando shooter and what had happened, and that the Democrats were irresponsible for continuing the filibuster on the floor. It's humorous because there are plenty of meetings and plenty of really important Senate hearings that the Republicans also don't show up for. And then, of course, comes the master of the filibuster, Ted Cruz, who said that this was all political theater and that it was just a show and it was worthless. And yet it was the exact same thing he did when there was something on the floor that he didn't like. It just goes to show hypocrisy will never disappear in politics. So that's the overall story this week, and I want to know what you think. Democrats won the ability to actually vote on these two things. Do you think they'll win? Do you think they deserve to win? And are there other common sense regulations that you think should be put in place? Or do you think none of them should be put in place? I want to know what you think. So thanks for watching the first actual episode of Disorderly Political. Stay tuned for next week. And usually I say, here's a little bit of the kids, but now I'm saving that footage for the other channel. So go over there. I'm really badly shadowed here. Promise next time I'm gonna get the lighting a little better. It's been a while since I've done this.